signs that your frequency resonance is rising have nothing to do with wild and crazy experiences in your meditations or your spiritual journeys, who was or was not your guru, and whether or not you remember all the words of some powerful mantra. How high your frequency resonance is dictates everything in your life, from how you feel to what level of abundance, magic, and awakening you get to experience. But how do you know that your frequency resonance is actually rising? In this episode, we're talking about some of the signs that may show up for you as your frequency resonance rises, to give your journey context. We'll also be discussing one of the biggest pitfalls to look out for with the signs themselves, and how to keep rising most effectively. My name is Karen Cheong, and in this episode of Mastering Your World Through Frequencies, we're talking about signs of your frequency resonance rising.
So today we're going to talk about frequency resonance rising and what are the signs for us that we know that it's actually happening.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great topic. And I wonder if we could just explain what you mean by frequency resonance first.
Yeah.
And why do we even care?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the most important thing. Well, some of you have heard me say before, your frequency resonance, or how high it is really what dictates or governs or informs what you get to experience in your life.
Yeah.
Okay? So the higher it is, the more you have synchronicity and magic and inspiration and things just coming out of left field that help you, that you wouldn't have anticipated. You have a deeper sense of intuition, a greater sense that everything is working out okay. You have a broader perspective. You can see other people's perspective more easily. And also, like, what you experience in terms of abundance totally shifts. So remember that everything is out there already, meaning it's infinite. It's an infinite field of possibilities. But what dictates what you get to experience in terms of those higher resonating possibilities, the timelines of what you get to experience, the trajectory of your life, really depends on how high your frequency resonance is. So the higher your resonance, the more you get to experience those higher vibrating or higher resonating trajectories. Now, when your resonance is lower, that's when it starts to feel like life is beating you up.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't matter what it is that you're trying to do. You get stuck in the same problems over and over again. Or those relationships that are draining or abusive or oppressive, or you can't seem to get ahead. It's like you're taking 3 steps forward and then 2 steps back. You know, it's just like, and it takes a lot of effort. So that's what happens when your resonance is lower and the trajectories of your life start to feel more limited. You know, you start to feel like you have less options.
Yeah.
So that's what happens when you're in a lower resonance.
Okay, so that's the why we care, right? I mean, who doesn't want to have a better trajectory for their future, you know? More inspiration and more understanding of the other person's point of view and more abundance, you know, everything, right? Yeah. But, okay, so let's talk about then, so that's the why, but what is the frequency resonance that's in us? Why is it so important for us to actually pay attention to it? I mean, I think I heard you once saying it's like a signal to the universe.
Yeah.
I think I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, what is it about the frequency resonance that needs to, you know, adapt, shift?
Yeah, like what is it? Yeah, so everything from my perspective is vibrating, right? And so the form of the thing is a reflection of the resonance or the speed of the thing. So if you take something really simple or physical like water, when the molecules are vibrating really fast, it's steam. And when that slows down, it becomes liquid water. And when it slows down even more in terms of the molecular vibration, it becomes ice, you know, a solid matter form. And so we are the same. So we have aspects of us that are physical. Obviously, your body is physical.
Yeah.
And then you have something that is spirit, you know, and, you know, people, different religions will talk about the soul, the spirit, or whatever. But there's an aspect of you that I call the big S self, infinite indestructible consciousness.
Right.
Right? That's the part of you that is aware that you're part of everything, or the oneness, and that the oneness is always part of you. Now, you may not think about that every day. You may think, oh God, I got to pay my bills and I got to get my kids to school and I got to make dinner.
Yeah.
But that aspect of you is aware that there's more to you than just your humanness, your physicalness. And so the combination of the big S self and you, the physicalness of you, or your ego mind that I call the little S self, the sum total of that is your frequency resonance. Let's just say.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was just going to say, so in raising our frequency resonance, are you saying then that we shift more into the big S self?
Yeah, exactly. Because your big S self is vibrating really fast, right? It's consciousness. But it's the challenge is our humanness, right? And your mind and your thoughts and all those things that you think, where you think I suck or I shouldn't be doing this or I don't deserve it or I'm not enough or I don't feel confident enough and all those things that you lack and you wish you had more of. All that stuff is from your mind, from your little S self. That's the part that has the distortions.
Right.
So when you clarify or release your distortion patterns, then your frequency resonance automatically rises. You don't have to do anything other than clear your distortion patterns because the part of you that's vibrating slower, of course, is that little S self. It's not you as you mentioned. The big S self, that's fine. Right?
And I imagine then the communication then between, well, not so much the little S self, but the communication from the big S self is louder then.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's when you can follow, your intuition gets stronger, I imagine.
Yeah.
And then you start to follow bigger breadcrumbs that lead you to better outcomes.
Yeah.
So that's why we want to focus in on rising in the frequency resonance.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because ultimately I believe that we are really in this lifetime here to awaken, which to me means that you're aware that your consciousness having an embodied experience. Now, most of us don't run around feeling like that way. You know what I mean? Most of us run around feeling we've got a million freaking things we got to do. We don't have enough time. We're chasing it. And we don't really ever have what it is we truly want. And it could be, that shifts, right? It may be like the new car, the new house, enough money, a thriving business, more impact. I don't care what the heck it is. You know, your kids are super happy, whatever. It doesn't matter how you define that. But it always feels like we're not, you know what I mean? Like we're not getting there.
Always chasing.
Always chasing. There's something wrong and it's never enough.
Yeah.
But when you start to rise in your resonance and you start to be aware more of your big S self, that aspect of you that is consciousness, and you start to, when you get high enough in resonance, recognize that your consciousness having an embodied experience. Like, not with your brain. It's not like I'm saying you think this and you wish it would happen, but you actually viscerally feel it. That is when things really start to shift. Because the limitation that we think that we have on the 3D that we collectively agree on is really something that's really based in our distortion patterns that we've held for countless generations, informed by our cultures and our religions and all that sort of stuff, our past lives. So when we start to have this experience of consciousness being embodied, you're freer of all that crap. You know what I mean? The illusion isn't what we think it is. It starts to change.
Yeah, and I think as well the desire for all them things that you thought you wanted. Dies off. Right? And there's this, like you've always said, the surrender for strength. So that if it doesn't happen, it's okay. Because you know something else better's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't know the timing of it. And you don't know what it's going to look like.
And it doesn't matter.
And it doesn't really matter. And you're just like, okay, well, I'm just going to focus on my own stuff and release my patterns and focus on my resonance and see what happens.
To begin to release the distortion patterns that keep you in your mind and attached to the signs themselves, which ironically keeps you from rising in your resonance, click on the link in the description below for your free group frequency calibration that's specific to this episode.
So I think we're kind of heading into the signs or your frequency resonance is rising. So if you had to give a short list to people that are watching this episode, here are the signs when you will know that your frequency resonance is rising and that you're starting to connect with that higher aspect, big S self. What would they be?
Okay. So I'm going to preface this conversation, as I often do, with please do not attach to these signs because they will shift as your resonance rises. And also, these are signs that many people have, but they don't necessarily mean you must have them. In order for it to mean that your frequency resonance is rising. So I just put it out there because I think a lot of people, and myself included, you know, even if it had been me a few years ago, I would have been like, oh my God, I don't have those signs. Like, nothing's happening.
Yeah,
you know
my resonance isn't rising.
But I'm doing all the work and blah, blah, blah. And what I'll start off by saying is sometimes when you go into those heavy periods of self-doubt, when you're like, I've been doing all this work, nothing's happening. Oh my God, this is bullshit or BS or whatever, you know, like Karen's BS, all of this is nonsense and I spent all this money. That actually oftentimes is a sign that you're just about to jump in frequency resonance. And you're in this period where you're
in the agitation of all your distortion patterns. So sometimes that period of self-doubt or that period of low self-worth or whatever it is where you start to get really agitated, I wonder if any of it is worth it and if anything is working at all. Oftentimes, that's just before a leap.
So that could be a sign?
Yes.
Okay, that could be sign number 1.
Sign number 1. Yes, I know. It sounds ironic, but it's true. And it's almost like a little version of like the dark night of the soul, you know? I'm not saying you have to go through anything as serious as the dark night of the soul, because you don't. Actually, it's not required. But it's kind of like a mini version of it.
Yeah.
You know, like a version of like a death process where you're like questioning everything. Because really, you are questioning everything. You're about to release a huge amount of stuff that you thought was important or real or whatever. And all those patterns are flaring for you to release them so you can move up in resonance. In case it's helpful.
That reminds me of when I'm trying to learn Spanish.
Yeah.
And I'm learning all these grammar things. I'm never getting that. I don't care. I don't want to learn this. I'm bloody enough of this. What's the point anyway? And then the next day or the day after, I'm like, oh, wait. Oh, I've got it now.
Is that funny when that happens?
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So that's sign number 1.
Sign number 1.
Okay. The other sign that your frequency resonance is rising is that you're not as triggered.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And by triggered, you mean?
Like really overreactive to things that probably would not bother someone else.
Okay.
So, for example, we all have people in our lives who shall not be named, who trigger us, right? Like they open their mouths and they say something and you receive it as criticism or you get pissy with them or you're impatient with them or whatever, or you just get angry or, you know what I mean? And that type of thing.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden you have conversations with them and you're okay. You're like, I just had a conversation with this person and I didn't want to punch her. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Or I didn't take it as criticism.
Yeah.
Or I didn't feel less than.
Yes.
Or I didn't feel like I had to defend myself. Or I didn't have to fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Like however you're triggered by that person or a situation. You're like, I can just be with them and notice that my response has changed. Because instead of a reaction now, it is a response in the sense that you get to choose how to be with that person.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, or even if it's not that grand of a change, there's a gap, right?
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed. It's like, okay, I'm maybe not hitting the reaction button straight away. I'm actually seeing, oh, I can feel myself reacting.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm being triggered. Okay,
Yeah.
well, just take a breath.
Yeah.
Come into my body. It's like, that's how I know things are shifting.
Yes.
And eventually I get to the place, well, that's just her being her.
Yes, exactly.
And it doesn't bother me. You
Yes.
know, but the first stage is often like, oh, I can feel myself getting triggered here.
Yeah.
Okay, this is mine.
Yeah.
And I have that, it's like, oh, that's a win.
Yes, totally it's a win. Because it's like separate from just being in the trigger.
Yeah.
That's the point. And I would say that as your frequency resonance rises, the experience of being triggered changes, as you said, you know? So at the beginning, it's just like, I had a client who she would receive a text from her sister. She would literally go into cold sweats because she was so triggered by this person because there's so many control patterns. So what would happen is that the first thing for her is she saw that there was a text. And instead of like having cold sweats, she just recognized that there was a text from this person. But she didn't have that same visceral response. You see?
Yeah.
That's like a huge win, right?
Yeah.
No one's going to notice that really except for her. But it's going to change, right? So now it's gone to the point she can have a conversation with her sister.
Yeah.
Right? So it didn't start off exactly like that. But it started off incrementally. Yeah. So I would say that totally changes.
And I think that's a really important point in this as well. Because sometimes there's a lot of people who do the work and think, well, why hasn't it changed? It should have happened overnight.
Yes.
You know, but to notice the incremental change is super powerful.
Yes.
Because then you can transfer that across to another situation. It's like, oh, I know what I need to do here.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so that's the second sign.
Yeah.
No, I'm holding one finger. That's the second sign.
Yeah. So I would say the third is that you have an ability to be more in surrender from strength. And I think that for a lot of people, they don't really know what that means.
I was just going to say, what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of people think of surrender as passive, you know, and weak. Because, you know, when you think of surrender, you think of someone waving the white flag or giving up or whatever, you know? But when I mean surrender from strength, it's actually from a perspective that you actually know how internally strong you are. And because you're so internally strong and because you are surrendered only to pure source, you're like, okay, well, I can now surrender. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be my way on my timing, or else all hell's going to break loose. You actually are able to be like, okay, I'm not in control, which is like a really big deal. So if you were like me a few years ago, control is like a really big deal. And it's really difficult to let go of control because there's so much fear, right? Like, oh my God, if I let go of this control, it's going to be a disaster. Like, I'm not going to have enough money, or something terrible is going to happen to this person I love, or whatever it was, you know? And so to actually be high enough in your resonance where you can surrender from strength, which means that you've released enough of your control patterns, enough of your fear patterns, that for real, you can be like, it's okay. I'm going to be okay. I've surrendered my will to pure source only. And I'm going to see what happens, because I actually don't know what the outcome is supposed to be, or what it should be, or what's the best for me or this other person. I actually don't know at this moment in time. It may be this is supposed to happen for this reason, so that in 5 days or 2 hours or 6 months from now, something else can happen that I could never have foreseen.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And I'd also like to add that oftentimes the not inability, maybe the resistance to surrender from strength is to trust in oneself that no matter how painful it could be or feel, that it's possible to transcend it.
Yeah.
I have the strength inside, internally, to transcend it, and it'll be okay.
Yeah.
You know, because I think oftentimes that's what folk are protecting.
Yeah.
They don't want to feel the pain or whatever it is they imagine that they have to control.
Yes.
I mean, I know intimately with my kids. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. You know, but you're going to have to.
Yeah.
You know, and it's trusting inside, I've got what it takes.
Yeah.
And to surrender and know that, okay, I'm going to be all right. I mean, I'm going to be all right.
Yeah. Totally.
So that was sign number 3.
Yes.
Okay,
so sign number 4 is, it's going to sound odd potentially to people. You start to purge. So you become like, you'll start to notice that you want to clean out all your closets.
Oh, right. That kind of purge.
Yeah, you want to get rid of stuff in your closets that don't serve you anymore. You'll start to like be aware of what's in your food cupboards. So meaning you'll start to clear up what's happening physically. So you're like, I'm noticing that I'm not moving enough. I'm noticing I'm not eating as well as I should be. Like your physical body and the strength of your body becomes more important to you.
Yeah,
you know, you start to notice it more because what you're becoming aware of without realizing it is that your physical body needs to be able to sustain a higher level of resonance. And in order to do that, it needs to function more optimally.
Yeah.
So that means moving and cleaning up your diet. It might mean that like things like that you wear no longer reflect who you are. So you might need to purge everything in your closet.
Yeah.
You might notice that like you want to clear up things that have been lingering for a while. Like, you know, certain time we all have those things.
Yeah.
You know, like one day I'm actually going to, I don't know, clean all my cutting boards and beeswax them, but you never do it.
Yeah.
Right, for example. Right? Or I'm going to finally clean out that pantry that I don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
That type of thing, you know? So I would say that type of stuff happens more. I would say that in the purging, sometimes people actually physically move. You know, they actually get a new job and they move to a different town, or they move to a different neighborhood or something like that happens where your physical environment changes.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is purging an old resonance and moving into something new. It could also happen with relationships.
Yeah.
Because you start to recognize the dynamic that I'm having with this person is of a lower resonance. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're of a lower resonance and you are so much better than them. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, I've been noticing this for a while and I haven't addressed it. And it's no longer serving either of us. I need to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it might be that certain relationships fall out of your life and new ones come in. It might be that you feel like you need to hermit for a little bit, you know, just to be by yourself as you're in the purge process.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like when you're not feeling well, you know, and you kind of just want to be alone. You're like, everyone go away.
Yeah.
Everyone just go away. I don't feel great. I need to get better. And then at some point when your body is like strong, you're like, okay, yeah, no, now I can have...
I'm ready.
I'm ready. Yeah, exactly. So that happens.
That can also be a sign of the purging, right? If you do get sick.
Yes.
Some people get sick when they're purging.
Yes, absolutely.
When they're letting go old frequencies.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it's not wonderful. And actually, it's funny because right now, you might notice that my voice is a bit off. I lost my voice. But, we're just about to give, I don't know when this is going to be released, but we're about to give our Portland event. And I'm purging now to get ready to jump into the next resonance to be able to give it.
Yeah.
Some of you will notice that your voice will change, or that type of thing. So that can happen too.
So your cranky voice isn't anything to do with screaming at Chris for not doing the dishes? I mean, it's not
Special voice just for that. I never get cranky feet.
No.
I only float around on my little
place.
clown. And I smell like lavender.
And oh, look, I see a rainbow over here now.
Yeah, and you probably saw my pet unicorn.
Oh, the beauty of frequency work, right? Yeah, okay, so that's a lot, even just in the 4 signs.
Yeah.
That's a lot for a lot of people to kind of pay attention to.
Yeah.
Do you have any more signs that you want to share?
I just want to share this 5th one, which has to do with your emotions.
Okay.
And your thoughts. So you start to gain distance from them. In the sense that you're like, I'm having a thought. But, usually when we have a thought, and we have a lot of them for some of us, especially when we begin. I certainly had a lot of them. They're not very nice to us, the thoughts, right? Like they tell you how you suck, how you're never going to make it, how there's so far left to go, how dare you think you can get there, whatever the thoughts are. They're not very nice.
Yeah.
Like, you're so fat, blah, blah, whatever. We all have these thoughts. Right?
All of them. And they're not nice.
They're not nice. They're terrible.
Always negative.
Yeah. And so we start to, when your frequency resonance rises, gain distance from them. So you recognize it's a thought. So it doesn't have the same power over you, you know? Because when the thoughts are going off and they're like screaming at you, they have a lot of power over us. We believe them. Yeah. That's my point. They seem not only real, but they also seem true.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're not happening. They are. But we take them in as if they're true. Yeah. Like that is the undeniable truth that never can change. And so we believe them. But the thing is, your thoughts are a reflection of your distortion patterns, And so when you start to release your distortion patterns and as your frequency resonance rises, your thoughts change. Yeah. And you also recognize them as thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say from my personal experience, I can see it coming before it gets there. Whereas before I was in it. And if anybody said to me back then, your thoughts are not you, they're not real, I was like, what the hell are you smoking?
Yeah.
And because this is my world and it's pretty bloody real. Yeah. Don't tell me it's not real.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize at the time that I was just basically reflecting what was going on internally was happening outside.
Yeah. Exactly.
And once I started the frequency work, like you say, the external changed because the internal changed. Yeah. And the big thing that I noticed was I actually saw the thought, whereas before I hadn't seen it. I was just in it. I was like, whoa, that's not a very nice thought. Where the hell did that come from? Yeah. So it was incremental.
Yes.
For me. It was like, I was in it, didn't know I was in it. I thought it was real. And then suddenly it was like it shot across my screen. Yeah. You are, whoa. What?
Yeah, it's really weird. And it's like that with emotions too. And I would say that because when emotions happen to us as humans, they feel really strong, And some of them are really big. And sometimes we don't want to feel them because they feel really bad. Yeah. And so the wonderful thing about when your frequency resonance is rising, you're not afraid of your emotion. Yeah. It's kind of like, all right, so I'm going to feel that fear. Yeah. And I'm going to feel that lack of control. And I'm going to feel the not worthiness. And I'm going to feel the self-doubt. And it will pass. Yeah. Because you know that it will.
Yeah. And it's like a gift almost.
Yes.
Because it's like, okay, that's there. I don't want this to have this power anymore.
Exactly.
I need to understand this one and figure out, right, let's get rid of this.
Yeah.
That kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think the wonderful thing about having distance from your thoughts and your emotions is that when people who you love, who really truly are giving you constructive criticism, right? They're not trying to bring you down.
Or have power.
Or have power over you or oppress you in any way. For me, I've noticed I can hear it. Because I'm not having, you know what I mean? The thoughts and the emotions aren't like, I suck because they said this about me. It's like, oh, okay, wait, they're saying this. So, okay, let me, this is happening in their experience. Is this happening?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It gives you space. Like, can you examine what is happening?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I understand why this is happening. And it gives you space to introspect more, I feel.
Yes.
And have more self-awareness, which only causes your resonance to rise and to see where the patterns are and to be okay with yourself, to give yourself more grace.
Yeah.
That's a surrender from strength, I think. It's just like, well, I'm being human. I'm working my way through it. I'm working my way through it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about like the perfection. I used to be very perfectionist and like, I need to get this sorted. I need to get it handled. I need to get it done. It needs to go away now.
Yeah.
It's like, well, sometimes it's not done now.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a little bit of time and to give yourself grace in your humanness of like, I'm working through it. You know? And I think that's the wonderful thing about having distance from your thoughts and your emotions as your resonance rises is that you have grace for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, I'm not trying to excuse bad behavior, but I think that, you know, sometimes we can be hard on ourselves. We are all of us our own greatest critics.
Yeah.
You know, that negative critical voice. But it's like, okay, well, I'm working through it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still accountable and I'm going through it. I think it's a wonderful thing that happens when your resonance rises that people don't really think about that much.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
There's definitely, for me anyways, there's definitely been a greater amount of peace at being Fiona.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm a work in progress.
Exactly. I'm a work in progress.
Okay.
And that's okay. Yeah, exactly. It'll unwind however it does.
Yeah.
But still, I want to just make this really clear with a very high level of accountability.
Yeah.
You know, because you do this yourself.
Yeah.
But it's like, I am going to be mindful. I am going to be self-aware.
Oh, yeah.
I am releasing the distortion patterns. And at the same time, I'm okay with being me.
Yeah.
And in this process that I'm moving through.
Yeah, so much so that even if I'm having an inner meltdown, you know, 2-year-old titty tantrum, whatever, I can actually vocalize it now and say, okay, I'm not having a good day. I'm really feeling sorry for myself and you all suck. But I love you. You know, like this. And we have a laugh about it. And the levity somehow makes it less intense as well.
Yeah, totally.
But again, it's because the frequency work and being committed to the rise and the resonance just gives a peace and space or,
Yeah.
here we go again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it's okay. We're going to get through it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would say the last sign that your frequency resonance is rising. This might sound strange for some people, but that you are very aware of your center.
Okay.
Okay. Because a lot of people can have all kinds of wild experiences, you know, and a lot of people seek them on their spiritual journey. Yeah. Like I journeyed into this space realm. I had this third dimensional, like this, not third dimensional, but like, I don't know, whatever, 15th dimensional being appeared before me. And do you know what I mean? Like all that jazz that people talk about.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that when your frequency resonance rises, you're very aware of where you are in space and time. Because that means that, yes, you can have all those experiences, but you're aware of where you are, your consciousness is, in your embodiment, in this space-time, without getting lost in it. Because I've been noticing in this time period where there's so much change and so much opportunity to rise in resonance, there's a lot of instability as a natural result. You know, so people are rising in their frequency resonance, but there's a lot of instability. So people are like losing it a little bit or a lot, depending on who you are. And there are all these rabbit holes you can go down on the internet now, saying all this crazy stuff on the internet about, you know, what's happening. And you can go down all these different rabbit holes. But the thing is, that's just your mind getting, you know, pulled into dark spaces sometimes. And it's really important at this time to be really centered in yourself. And I think when your resonance rises, you can have all that stuff, but you're very aware of like where you are located in space and time. Now, for some of you who are just beginning, that doesn't make any sense, right? You're like, Rah. But for those of you who have more experience, you know what I mean. Yeah. Because I mean, it's fine to have all those weird, wild, amazing experiences. Yes. As long as you don't lose the plot. Yeah. You know, or lose your mind as you're doing it. Yeah. You don't need to lose your mind in order to have that.
And you don't need the experiences to rise in resonance.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. You don't need the experiences to prove anything. Yeah. To show that you are spiritually awakening or that you are moving into a new consciousness level. If you experience nothing at all and your frequency resonance is rising, perfect.
Yeah. I often say to people that have had them kind of experiences or search for them. Yeah. What advantage is it to you to have it?
Exactly.
Is your resonance going to rise because of it? Then what's the point?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And I would say that as your resonance rises, you know when you're out of zero way faster.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa, this does not feel good.
Yeah.
Like everything starts to get a little like this.
And I don't know about you, but the reactions to people, the triggers, they're like, whoa, hang on.
Yeah.
What's going on here? And that's my instant like, whoa. Hang on, I'm being triggered by silly little things that haven't bothered me in months.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or like there's just a lot of drama for some reason.
Yeah.
Or like for some people it might happen more physically. Like you start bumping into things a lot. Like you actually start hurting yourself. You know, it's like if you're chopping, you know, garlic for dinner, for example, you actually cut yourself by accident.
Yes.
Because you don't know where the knife is.
Yeah.
Or like you bump into doors, or you have fender benders in the car, or do you see what I'm saying?
Things.
You keep dropping things.
Yeah.
You bump. Yeah. It's just... clumsiness is like, yes, of course. I mean, we all have moments where we're klutzy, right? I don't think that's abnormal.
No.
But for some people, because they're more physically based, if you're out of your center and all of a sudden it starts happening a lot, it's like, whoa, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Or you start like, if you're somebody who doesn't usually forget things, or you're okay with time, you know, generally speaking. I mean, you might not know every minute of what's happening in every day, but you don't usually forget appointments.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you don't usually miss the plane.
Yeah.
You don't usually, you know, that type of thing. And all of a sudden you start forgetting to like call people back, or missing appointments or meetings or whatever. You're missing deadlines. Like that doesn't usually happen. For some of you who are more physical, that might be another sign that you're out of center.
Yeah.
But my point is that you start to recognize it faster when you're out of it because it feels not good. And so that's another sign about your frequency resonance rising, is you know when you're in your center and you know when you've popped out of it a little bit.
Okay, wow, these are great signs.
Yeah.
And, you know, for us to look for. But I know they're not specific, linear, 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. I understand that some of them might happen, some of them might not happen.
Yeah.
There can be variations of what you say.
Yeah.
But it's just a general guideline.
Yeah. And I think it's important that you said that because, you know, in our minds, we can really attach to like, oh my God, she just said that there are these whatever number of signs. And if I don't have them, then I'm screwed and it's not working. That's not how it works. These are just guidelines so that if you are experiencing it, you have some context.
Yeah.
That if you aren't experiencing it, just know that it doesn't matter whether or not you experience this or not. It doesn't mean it's not working.
Yeah.
And that you're going to have your own path. So to watch your attachment to the mental construct of what the signs of your frequency resonance are, because that's actually the thing that will stop you from having that abundance, the inspiration, all that good stuff we started with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then you're just attached to it and you're like, oh my God, if I don't have those things.
Yeah, you become fixated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then I'm, you know, sucking in some way, or it's not working for me or whatever, but that's just your mind. So it's really to be aware of your mind and to not attach so much to what the end outcome is that you think it should be.
Yeah. What a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now you know some of the signs of a rising frequency resonance. That's helpful information. But what if you want to actually raise your frequency resonance? What do you need to do? Check out my next video to learn how. I'll see you inside.